more interactive ability and tactileness. Oh no! No!
See, once again, you can't really just skip over the fact that Star Citizen was originally sold as a PvP open world game, right? You can't say, well, I bought this PvP over open world game, but now I want it to be made PvE. All right, here we go. Calling All Minions, Episode 3. Let's see what's up here. PvP ganking. Exterminatus, PvP/ganking, PvP server, and PvE server, or any other solution planned. PvP, Okay. First of all, many thanks in advance for your constructive feedback, and sorry if I missed some relevant information before, and also for my bad English. I am Swiss from Zurich. There are many players who are worried about childish players who enjoy ganking players, and there are some players who try to avoid PvP at all if possible. What are your plans regarding PvE servers? Are there more than one server planned? No, there aren't. There never was. Or are we all playing on one server? Yes, we are all playing on one server. If we PvE players don't have an opportunity to change the server because there is only one, what are your plans to satisfy our needs? Well, see, there really isn't a plan for that. I mean, there are certain areas that are going to be safer, but there are certain areas that are just going to be, kind of a free-for-all. See, the problem with your thinking here is that you're thinking that there needs to be a separate server. There was never sold to be a separate server. There was never an idea presented that this was going to be a PvE/PvP server. That there was never going to be like two separate universes. It was always going to be all in one, right? That's how the game was sold to the players. Okay, I play well. All right. And started with a PvP server because of some friends. I never enjoyed exploring the world because of the PvP system and some childish players. Well, no, see, once again, you're not understanding what you did. See, you joined onto a PvP server. You had friends there, presumably. I guess you never really understood what that was all about. And once again, World of Warcraft offers a PvP and an exclusive PvE environment. Star Citizen has never offered that. That was never on the table. Should they? Possibly. Someone could make a business case for it, but I think that overall, people will benefit from that environment. It'll make them better players. It'll make them smarter players. It'll make for a much more immersive experience. I think I talked about this recently. Since the last add-on, the developers have adapted. Okay, so we're still talking about WoW here. The developers have adopted the whole PvP system. Every player basically plays in PvE mode unless you activate PvP, blah, 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 blah. The system is fair to everyone. Well, not really. See, once again, the PvP system in BFA was never fair. What happened was, without getting too much into it, is pretty much the Horde dominated it from the very beginning, and the Alliance players pretty much all turned war mode off. And I even made a video of this where I was running around in a few Alliance zones, and I fast forwarded the video, and you saw the whole thing where I was doing all these missions flagged for PvP, and I never got touched. And I literally had to freeze frame the video and say, oh shit, there was an Alliance player just right over there, but I missed them. They just abandoned it as soon as they were given the option, right? Fallout 76 also supposedly has a good system in which player attacks first does much less damage on the attackee or on the person they are attacking until the attacked player decides to shoot back. So basically what they're doing is they're trying to remove the advantage of a surprise attack, the advantage of taking the initiative, which is kind of a stupid idea. Um, if there are no such plans, or they have been deliberately or have deliberately decided against them, I ask you, is there nothing we PvE players can do but explore guarded systems? Well, by buying Star Citizen, you are basically saying, I want to be a PvP player. That's how Star Citizen is sold, right? It's an open world PvP game. The topic, unfortunately, is very important for many players, and it would be very unsatisfactory if these important points were not considered. See, once again, you can't really just skip over the fact that Star Citizen was originally sold as a PvP open world game, right? You can't say, well, I bought this PvP over open world game, but now I want it to be made PvE, right? Like, no, it's like saying, I bought World of Warcraft. Why aren't there laser guns? And, well, actually, there are spaceships in World of Warcraft, oddly enough. But it'd be like saying, oh, well, why isn't Gandalf in World of Warcraft? Why can't I have Gandalf in World of Warcraft? It's, you know, that's a different game. That's a different world. That's a different universe. Unfortunately, in this one, it operates under these rules, right? So that is kind of the way it is. What's this? Lorville Suburbs. Colt Deagle. I was flying around Lorville Suburbs intending to explore when I was able to see all of them have no fly zone. Everyone knows it. Then I saw these huge pipes. It's possible to walk on them, get to the suburb. It ended in an invisible wall, and the path became deadly. We can imagine the limitations to implement full cities. I'm not talking about full planets like ArcCorp, but at least one of these suburbs should be a test field for tech. The question is, are there any plans for these suburbs, I guess, to become accessible? In other words, have you talked about that? Keep on your nice work. I think that when you make so much accessible, when you make like an entire planet, especially like areas like this, there's probably a lot of things that could happen in there because they're facades. They're not real locations. Like there's really, it's just an exterior. There's nothing in it. It's like when you drive through, you go on a Universal Studios tour, all the buildings are more or less just facades. There's not like a real house with sinks and lights and beds and all that inside of it. And they really don't want you to see that, right? Um, there are certain games as well. Certainly, the older MMOs, if you could get up on cliffs and on hills from certain locations, you could view a city from an unintended angle, and you could see just how much of that was really just an empty facade. And so, chances are, you know, they don't want you to get in there, right? It's kind of a tricky way to kind of hide, the stuff that would break your immersion. Like all of a sudden you go around and you see that there's really nothing there, whereas if it's kind of blocked out and away from you, then you can look at it and your imagination fills in the details. But if you go over there and you look at it and you kind of look behind the curtain and you see the wizard behind the curtain, then you know that it's not real and it kind of takes you out. So that's probably why they're doing that. And just because they wouldn't really have the resources to build hallways and bathrooms and kitchens and all that stuff for every single location. So that's probably the rationale behind that. Until when? All right, ACD. Until when will the SRV be available? That, of course, is the Argo Stevie Ray Vaughan. Hi. I wonder until when will the SRV and Argo utility pack be available? I don't, or sorry, I want to buy the War Bond utility pack, but it's a lot of money and I can't afford it until the beginning of March. Another question: can I upgrade separately the 3 ship and keep the LTI after purchasing it? Thank you and sorry for my bad English. No problem. Um, I wasn't even. I want to buy the Warbond utility pack, but it's a lot of money. Wait, which one is the Warbond utility pack? Uh, Robert Space Industries. Where is it? Okay. Argo Stevie Ray Vaughan. Utility pack. Where are we here? More info. Plays. Argo SRV, MPUV, lifetime insurance. Typically, yeah, I believe you can upgrade the individual ships within a multi-ship pack. I would like to see some, comments confirming that. Um, but I believe that that is a thing that you can do. But if you can only afford it at the end or beginning of March, what was it? Then it may be gone by that time, unfortunately, for you. When the sale finishes, I'm not exactly sure. When does the sale finish? Is it the 4th of March that this finishes? Yeah, it's in the store until March 4th. So if you're good on March 1st, then you should be good to go. And I believe that you can, unless someone replies in the comments below, that you cannot, CCU the individual ships within a pack. I believe you can. UEE's collapse stacks. UEE's collapse. So I've read that eventually in the lore, the empire splits off into a Roman Byzantine type with one capital being on Earth and the other being on Terra. Is this true? Would it be fair to assume that this was caused by the imperator's lack of text to speech device? Ah, the Heartbreaker. Space Cowboy, Heartbreaker. Why is it that the Hornet Heartbreaker not flyable, only weapons and components change, and a sticker on the side, not even a loaner ship? I believe there actually is a loaner ship. It's just the bargain basement F7C. It will be flyable in 3.5. Like, that is like 6 weeks. They won't make a new patch just to introduce a skin. So, I mean, from my perspective, it looks like this was kind of thrown together last minute, because if it wasn't, it probably would have been hidden in the game files and they could have just popped it out on Valentine's Day, but they didn't. So it feels like it's kind of a last minute decision. They're just like, okay, here's a weapon fitting and a skin. As a Hornet, I've seen different people defending and going, oh, yeah, it's a great deal. I wanted a Hornet with exactly those weapons. Well, if you wanted a Super Hornet, Super Hornets are always out there, and the weapons aren't exclusive to the ship. You might say, oh, well, then I have to go out and buy them. Well, once again, that's the argument for item insurance and whatnot, and that's, we're not going to go all the way down that road. But to me, it feels like it was something that they cooked up, without enough lead time, that by the time they had a chance to implement it, they missed being able to deliver the ship on the day, which I think was kind of a dumb mistake. And it's like, it's a special ship that's already been released with a special fitment. All the weapons have already been released. The only thing that's different is a skin, and you can't release it on the day that you sold it. I mean, that's just a stumble. It was just a big dumb move. Let's do this one. Targeting non-party members versus crime stat threat level. Zamfir. Currently, targeting friendly versus hostile seems to be driven by relative crime stats. If I have no crime stats, then hostile folks with high crime stats and vice versa. If I have no crime stats, then hostile are folks with high crime stats and vice versa. This works well enough, except if you're in a party that has members of varying crime stats. Well, that's group system. Um, that's something that needs to be improved. Realistically, the whole targeting and selection interface is really kind of meh. It's not terrible, but at the same time, it's not the best when you're trying to rotate through and get to a specific target. Some of that relates to playing in a first person world. You just have to accept it. That's the way that a first person world works versus, like, let's say a third person world where you might be able to click on your mouse on somebody like a traditional MMO. This is, it's a different thing, so you have to kind of accept that there's going to be a certain amount of difficulty in that. But I do understand what you're saying. Like, you want to be able to just cycle through hostile targets that are not in your party versus cycling through a whole bunch of hostile targets and sometimes accidentally targeting one of your party members. So eventually this is something that should be worked out, but once again, it needs a lot of feedback like this. It needs a lot of people talking back saying, "Hey, you got to fix this." But yes, 100% correct. It should be fixed. Hull E modularity. Um, in the Hull E description, we can find mention of its modularity. Their potential load and modularity is unparalleled. However, no other ship allows much room to store goods, or no other ship allows as much room to store goods or to modify towards another role. Yeah. Which are the other roles planned for the Hull E? And of course, it shows it here. I think this was this CIG produced or was this player produced? I believe this was CIG produced, but I may be mistaken. And this is, of course, the rear engines, and these are like the ship carrying racks. Um, I think that this was originally flavor text that was written by one particularly overly enthusiastic ship pipeline director, and without a lot of forethought into how to implement it. It's just like, oh, we'll figure it out when we get to it. I would say that the overall idea of carrying ships in some kind of deactivated or disassembled state is probably something that you're very likely going to see. Turret modules, I would not bet on. Mining modules, I definitely would not bet on. Um, Hangar module, probably not. Possibly, I mean, an argument could be made for a small functional hangar module, but I think CIG will tamp that down pretty hard to maintain the use of ships like the Kraken. So they're probably going to say, well, when modularity, we meant different kinds of cargo modules like gas containers and stuff like that. There were a lot of people who got a little overexcited about the Hull E in the early days, and they kind of gambled that it was going to be this super ship that could do everything based off of, the talk of its modularity. And I think they invested a little too much in that belief, whereas the more wary amongst us were kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. So I don't think so. Let's see. What else do we got here? The Carrick pool table. Calling All Devs replacement show. Are you planning to replace Calling All Devs with any other show anytime soon? I would hope that they didn't. I would hope that they would see the error of their ways and basically reinstate calling all devs. Um, my personal opinion, I made this known when it first happened, was that I liked the idea that it was community driven, that the community decided the questions, and they say, oh, well, we're baking it all into, RTV. We're baking it all into reverse the verse. I disagree because reverse the verse is always like, well, today we got the sound guys. So you can't ask the sound guys any particular questions, which means you can defer away somebody's question for months and months and months. Whereas RTV, or Calling All Devs rather, was driven by the community. The community decided the questions and then they had to go and source the answers. I think the reason why it's gone is because the community was now able to pin developers down basically and say, answer this question. How are you going to do this? How do you think you're going to do that? And that could be a very uncomfortable place to be when you're not sure what the answer is actually going to be and you don't want to make any promises. And I think that's why Calling All Devs is gone. It has been one of the more difficult things in the relationship between backers and developers has been, we want some answers to these questions. We want substantial some substantial information regarding these topics. And it was always like, oh, let's just defer it away. Let's just push it away. We don't need to have this guy on anytime soon. We don't have to deal with it. And I think that RTV gives them too much room to evade community concerns and important questions. So I hope that it does come back. I really, really do. Tibster, I guess. Where does Lorville and any other buildings get their electrical power from? It is a large underground hamster wheel with millions of hamsters spinning the wheel, and that generates electrical power. Nuclear generators, reactors, fusion reactors, whatever. Horns for ships. Kadoge. Will there be ship horns like the bell of a cyclist over truck honks to cruise ship horns? Bell of a cyclist over truck honks to, okay, whatever. Maybe even customizable, just to let your friend know that you're standing outside ready to pick him or up. I could think of nothing more obnoxious to put into the universe than like something like honking horns, because you know that there's just going to be people who are just going to like for hours because they know that it annoys people, so they're just going to keep doing it. So I hope that never sees the light of day. All right, we'll do this as the last one. BZ Dan suggestions. Have a few suggestions, and I hope the developers read these postings. Have planetary coordinates and compass with planetary coordinates for each point of interest. on the respective planet, similar to what's implemented in Elite Dangerous. It is more realistic than having just markers and quantum drive to them. 100% agree. All right. Two, anyhow, quantum drive should not be possible in the neighborhood of planets. One approach could be a three-tier speed setup using quantum drive between systems. Some kind of we're not copying the Elite Dangerous flight model. No. The current system is okay with some minor tweaks and changes. Overall, um, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to limit you to certain paths when you travel through the universe. Like you have to warp from this planet to this planet, and then you can go to the moons and stuff like that. Because they're trying to find a way to make their interdiction model work. Besides the fact that it doesn't, because basic geometry will tell you that. Um, so that's kind of what they're trying for. The Elite Dangerous system does have a certain beauty to it. I'll say that. It's interesting, and I like the way that it's interactive, and it's certainly skill based, but I think to just kind of use the super quantum to go between star systems and the ability to, just kind of free warp around systems and navigate around left, right, and all that is a pretty cool idea. What I would like is a lot more freedom to choose endpoints than we currently have. I would like the ability to free warp into empty space, certainly. I'm not sure that I would really dig just lifting the quantum model from, or not the quantum model, but the frame shift drive model from Elite Dangerous. But there are certain merits to it. Number three, action. The action is set up in a far future, thus technological, industrial, architectural development will be much more advanced than it is now. Don't bet on it. However, the interior design and architecture of the stations look worse than even the current technological state, which is a big contradiction. That's art trumping functionality. Thus, in my opinion, the interior design and architecture of the stations should reflect the state of the future development and look much more modern, even futuristic. Example, Mass Effect Andromeda. Well, if you're talking about artistic style, then it can vary, right? Because some people like to do their house up in the old timey ways, and other people want to do like ultra modern type shit. Um, in terms of functionality and flow of certain spaces, what you're going to see is you're going to see game developers who are kind of rooted in FPS games, sort of like Doom. Like these are guys who I created a lot of levels in Doom or something like that, and they're thinking about sight lines and making interesting places where you can have like gunfights. But see, the problem is that they're stuck in that mode of thought. That's the only way they can really view the world, and they don't. I mean, for them to kind of go and move from that model to the idea of a functional living space that makes sense, not as a place to shoot guns. Like, when an architect designs a home, he's not thinking, okay, what are the sight lines? How can we get hot, fast FPS action in here, right? They're thinking about how do I make the space flow? How do I make the space functional? Whereas, unfortunately, the Star Citizen devs are kind of stuck in this kind of FPS idea. And it really has kind of ruined a lot of the ship interiors. It's made them kind of mazy and kind of, just inconvenient to navigate and a real pain in the ass. It's like, oh, you can go around this way or you can go around this way and get behind the guy. And that's kind of how they're thinking. Instead of like, why don't I just make a space that's open and flows well and that's convenient to navigate and leave a little room for airlocks because, oh, apparently this game is in space and I should have airlocks. But I was more concerned with, creating interesting sight lines for shooting people. It's kind of a mess, but I do agree it's something that they really need to kind of take a second look at, and sooner rather than later, because they keep pushing out ships with these problems, and I don't think that they're fully, really willing to accept what they've done and kind of say, maybe we kind of overdid it. All right, and number 4, is there any way the controls and the key bindings can be maintained from one version to another? Each player probably sets up their key bindings and controls according to their preference, and it's a pain to reset them every time a new version is issued. This is even more painful for players using voice commands with voice attack and HCS voice packs, voice command profiles. What do you think about these? Well, the key bindings thing is something that's going to be, unfortunately, that's going to be shifting sands for a while. There's going to be constant readjustment and, going back and saying, is this a primary function? Is this a secondary function? What do we need to have right away? What can we say, hit control in this, hit alt in this, hit shift in this to get these functions? So there's always going to be like this jockeying going on for a while. You just, right now, it's just a pain in the ass. You have to adapt to it, but in the future, hopefully, things will get ironed out. I mean, like I use a Razer Naga mouse and I use a Logitech G13 right now to fly in Star Citizen. And I know what you mean. Whenever they make big changes to key bindings, I'm just sitting there going, oh, shit. But it is the way it is, unfortunately, at this stage of the game. Anyways, that has been the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.